Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It's Friday, and all of our guests today, including Thomas Drance, brought to you by the Bayside Oceanfront Resort. A lot of B's in there. Got me confused. Escape to the Bayside Oceanfront Resort, the ideal mid-island destination for a relaxing weekend getaway. Enjoy comfortable accommodations, ocean views, and exceptional service. Book your stay today at BaysideResortParksville.com. Here's a guy who never makes a mistake. From The Athletic, Thomas Drance, ahead of the Canucks and Blue Jackets in Columbus, Ohio. I'm sure you enjoyed that, Thomas.
Well, and see here, I thought you were offering me an olive branch.
Ooh, that's good. Oh, that happened last week.
No.
Yeah.
But no, you finished it with a windmill dunk, Donnie. Look, I deserve it. We all get it wrong sometimes.
Hey, I got to give you credit because you noticed something, and I don't know if it's a case of great minds thinking alike, but you noticed something at the UBS Arena the other night against the Islanders that I noticed. First period, Elias Pettersson has a scoring opportunity. He misses, and then he's got to get back on defense. And he ends up hitting high speeds on a back check. It was so impressive, blowing by everybody, including his own teammates, who should have been hustling more. But how impressive was that, Thomas?
Yeah, well, especially because speed's not his game, right? I mean, this is a heavy player, right? Like the thing that's going to keep Elias Pettersson around in the league is that he's kind of built like a tank, and every time he throws a hit, it looks like it hurts. It's not the speed game. It's not the skill game. So the fact that he's got that in his bag, the fact that he's also a calm puck mover, right? I think that's really impressive because it hints at a guy who might have maybe a bit more ceiling than being like your conventional physical third pair defenseman, right? You're like Ian Cole type. And no disrespect to Ian Cole, an excellent player who I think it's fair to say that the Canucks missed over the course of the season. But, could he do more? Moments like that, moments where you see him have wheels like that suggest that, hey, maybe there's a higher ceiling here than just, a bottom pair shutdown type D. Maybe there's more he can do. And that's why that moment sort of really jumped off the ice to me.
Hey, Thomas, look ahead to Columbus tonight. Look, 5 points behind the Blues. The Blues are red hot. They just refuse to cool down. It's a heater of all time. One of the all-time.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's one.
They're fun to watch right now.
Yeah, the all-time heater. They're forcing Vancouver to win every game.
Canucks. They are, and you know what? They played badly last night. By the way, like that third period before they got the Cam Fowler goal, which was kind of out of nowhere, and then Dylan Holloway kind of seagulled. I think it was Michael McCarron and won the game. Scored 2 goals within 21 seconds, not dissimilar to what they did to the Canucks the other night, right? Where they just bang, bang, got 2 real quick and flipped the game on its head. Man, they played badly. Like that third period, they were dead in the water. Looked like they had 0 legs whatsoever. I think they iced the puck like 10 times, right? I mean, it was an ugly performance. And then at the end of it, they've won, even though they sort of allowed a buzzer-beating game-tying goal. It's just that Jonathan Marchessault didn't beat the clock by a couple seconds. I mean, that's it. Like that's classic heater stuff, right? This was the first time on their 8-game win streak that they entered the third period trailing, and it didn't matter. They got the regulation win. Dylan Holloway is second in the league behind only Matvei Michkov in 5-on-5 scoring since the Four Nations break. Him and Robert Thomas in the top 10 in the league since the Four Nations break in overall scoring. I mean, that team's putting a lot of pressure on the Canucks, and it makes it so that, all the good work that Vancouver did in the New York area this week, an unfortunate loss to the Rangers, but really nice, resilient performances against the Devils and the Islanders, didn't close the gap at all, right? They basically needed those wins just to tread water, 5 points back of St. Louis in the playoff race, and now you're facing a Columbus team that is a really difficult opponent. The Canucks beat them earlier in the year, but do you remember that game, gentlemen? Do you remember how many chances Columbus had in the first 30 minutes? They were playing the second leg of a back-to-back and faded hard in the second that game. But in the first half, they were all over the Canucks. And now they're the rested team. The Canucks are at the tail end of a long, difficult road trip with a fair bit of travel. I mean, that, you know, I'm pretty worried about this game being a mismatch, and that's even before we found out from Rick on Twitter that Teddy Bluger might be battling the flu, and the Canucks might be down yet another centerman.
Hey, Thomas, one thing that's happening is I think there's 7 Abbotsford players in the lineup tonight.
Yeah.
They're getting a look at a lot of these guys down the stretch. Lekaramaki, Devils, awesome goal. Ratu, Islanders, awesome goal. Elias Pettersson. They're getting a look at a lot of these guys, and which might help them in making decisions for next year. They're getting a good look at the kids.
Yeah, Linus Karlsson too, right? Who already got signed for next year, right?
Yeah.
Like the club already committed to him. I think he's played really well too. I thought he was really solid against the Islanders. So yeah, I mean, a good look on Manny Malhotra that these guys have been ready to jump into the lineup and play. They've been able to contribute seamlessly. They've helped this team keep their head above water. And then obviously the Abbotsford Canucks themselves have rolled down in the American League despite all the injuries and absences that the Canucks have dealt with at the NHL level. And like, this is how this works, right? There's a knock-on effect. When you have injuries in the NHL, it tends to hollow out your American League roster too. And yet, this American League team under a first-year head coach has kept chugging along. They haven't had great goaltending. It hasn't been that. Like, this has been really solid play from Abbotsford, and obviously it's working from a player development perspective, which, I think sort of explains too, Rick, why when talks do start with Tom Verlander at some point, right, the club's preference is going to be for him to join the American League team as opposed to the NHL team. And I think, he's actual real-life friends with Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, right? They played World Juniors together. They know each other pretty well, refer to each other as one of my best friends if you're interviewing either of them, right? And I mean, you can see the impact. Like, I watched Elias Pettersson at training camp and during the preseason, and I was wildly impressed, but it was also clear that this wasn't a gentleman who was ready necessarily. Now you're watching him, skate 1,000,000 miles per hour on the back check and play really sturdy defense and honestly contribute offensively too, in high pressure games at the pointy end of the NHL season. And he looks like a different guy. There's no question that he's ready now. That 5-6 months in Abbotsford clearly helped him a ton. I think the Canucks would love to recreate that with Tom Verlander as an example, with an eye toward him being, a full-time contributor at the NHL level next season.
Okay, so what exactly, and we touched on this earlier, Thomas, what exactly, and you touched on it just now, but what exactly is going on in Abbotsford from a success point of view? Is it Malhotra? Is it the Sedins? Is it the geography involved, which is much less cumbersome than the Utica days? Or is it all the above? What's going on there? Because it's one of the few positives this season.
Well, I think it's all of the above, and I think actually one thing that's been pretty impressive during this Alvin Rutherford axis, right, is that you remember that first year that the Canucks relocated to Abbotsford, and it was like Rick's buddy Sheldon Dries and Nick Patan, and they had all those big money guys. Like, really, they had one of the highest salaries of any American League team. And that's, one thing you can do in the AHL. Like, it's an uncapped league. It's not like the NHL. You can have more money on your first power play unit than your opponent has in their entire lineup if you want. The Toronto Marlies do it every year. Yeah. And, the Canucks kind of did that in that first season, and I think it proved a little bit unsustainable from a business perspective. And, under Rutherford and company, like, you've got Akito Hirose on a one-way deal. Obviously, Artur Shilovs, who hasn't been down there of late, but has spent a lot of time down there this season, is on a one-way deal. You've got a couple of those guys, but for the most part, right, like these are young teams. Like, these are young teams that are being used primarily for development, and they're winning. And, this club moved on from Jeremy Colleton this past summer, who did a phenomenal job across 2 years in Abbotsford. And, Manny Malhotra hasn't been a head coach really at any level. He's an experienced hockey guy, obviously, and a highly thought of assistant coach at the NHL level, but hadn't been a head coach. And he's come in and sort of picked up the baton without missing a beat here. What they've built in Abbotsford, what Ryan Johnson has cooking down there, it's legitimately very impressive, especially because it's prioritized youth as opposed to winning, right? This is really a team that they're using for development purposes. And, I don't know that they've seen like the full fruits of that. It's not like there's a star player who they've graduated through the system yet, but that's kind of not necessarily how it works. Like, it takes time. And now you've got guys like Lekaramaki, and Elias Pettersson, guys with real ceiling who have come through that system and look better for it, right? It seems to be better integrated into what the club's doing. Obviously, they were using the local proximity to toll daily cap space over the course of the season. It didn't matter because the team didn't find themselves positioned the way they'd hoped to. But, you can see how integrated the American League is into their overall operation, their player development apparatus. And, I think there's some interesting things going on, even if it hasn't quite – like the seeds being planted are very interesting to me, even if we don't necessarily have like a big old growth cedar to point to as a proof of success just yet. They keep doing the right stuff. It's coming.
Old growth cedars have branches, if I'm not mistaken.
Branches.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Don't hit every branch on the way down.
There you go. Excellent as always, Thomas. Thanks for this.
Cheers, boys.